How much are you automating your business? And what are you doing to differentiate yourself in this kind of new world of real estate now that the NAR settlement is in practice? I spoke with Stuart Sim. He is the VP of Industry Development for Lofty, and we talked all things AI and marketing strategies for kind of this new market, including maybe a little market outlook where you can prepare your business to take advantage of the next upswing. So enjoy the podcast, and I hope you'll learn a lot. So Stuart, welcome to the RealTrending podcast.
So happy to be here. I've been looking forward to this for a long time, as you know.
Yeah. And so we're going to talk all things marketing today. And, obviously the changes went into effect for the settlement a couple days ago. So we're fresh with those. So where do you see the most opportunity for agents as far as their marketing goes now that the settlement is, the date is here?
Yeah, I actually believe I've always been a positive guy about the industry. I'm a believer in the industry. So I think there's lots of opportunity depending on where you kind of sit, whether you're a broker or team lead or an individual agent. Now, teams are really becoming prominent in the industry. And it's kind of been a trend over the last 12 to 24 months. So I think with the new rules and regulations, it actually creates more of a fair marketplace for people. And if you are an agent that's out there working very hard and getting your positioning and getting your brand established, I think you're going to be able to drive business for the rest of 2024 and 2025. Now, we're all driven by inventory and we're driven by the rates that are out there. And there's been some interesting news over the last couple of weeks that rates are going to possibly improve as early as September. Maybe not enough to drive the business that we're hoping for, but that at least gives us a positive view into 2025. And if I was, creating a budget for, real estate business, I would be planning on some pretty significant growth over 2024.
Yeah. And, I know they're having to really adapt their marketing strategies right now as well, especially with buyer consultations and just figuring out how to get that form signed before the showing in that. So tell me a little bit about how you're seeing them adapt and what some of your recommendations are.
Yeah, so it's pretty interesting. And now, all the formality of what's happening out there, but you still have to have your presence. So the industry 20 years ago was really driven by the broker or the agent, promoting properties or listings. And, it was really one lead per property. It's very different today's world because the consumer has become so much more educated on real estate and what's happening in their specific marketplace. So as a real estate professional, absolutely, you have to have the right forms through the MLSs and everything like that. But you also have to inform the consumer of what's happening in your specific market because each market is very different. And what I've really seen is some of the really top agents are really focusing on that, providing the information that's really important to the consumer because the consumer now is not just getting their information from, say, a website. They're getting it from realtor.com. They're getting it from Zillow. They're getting it from multiple different sources that are out there, including, someone like RealTrends or, another media outlet. So I love the fact that the consumer has become more educated and in some cases more than an agent. So you have to really provide the relevant information. There's not going to be as much fluff out there as there were during those couple of years following COVID, when we were all kind of living the dream. Now you have to really provide the right information at the right time. Now, as a company, what we do is we look at everything from search to settlement. So that first time the consumer has a search experience right through to they list their home and sell their home or buy their next home.
Yeah. And when you talk about that, you're really talking about the market stats, like what's going on in your market week to week. What are some of the numbers that you think are the most important for them to really have on hand?
It's a good question. Everybody right now is super concerned about interest rates, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
and the number of transactions that are taking place in individual markets. Like the market that I live in is still crazy. It never slowed down.
Mm-hmm.
But there are many markets that they just don't have the inventory to remain relevant, call it, in the world of
Mm-hmm.
real estate, where they're just not performing enough transactional business on a year over year basis. Right now, we're really hoping that we start to see that shift when interest rates do, call it, settle into a better rate, or the
Mm-hmm.
election. Typically, elections will have some form of influence on interest rates.
Mm-hmm.
And how long it takes, from November 5th to that actually to hit the market is going to be kind of the conversation piece that lasts over the next, call it the trade show season that we're kicking into. We've
Mm-hmm.
already started, but, I'm going to be on the road for kind of the next 4 of the next 5 weeks. So,
Yeah.
what's going to take place in each individual market. And, as a real estate agent, you have to be conscious of what your clients and your customers are looking for.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of inventory is available currently? What kind of inventory do you estimate becoming very relevant? Now, something we'll probably talk about over the next few minutes or the next whatever we're on for is, the rental community and what
Mm-hmm.
is taking place with property management, with what's going on in the rental market. It's still very
Mm-hmm.
active, but renters turn into buyers. And
Yeah.
when's that going to happen?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, rents are crazy right now too. So that's a great market to really go after. And so let's talk about tools and platforms and that. What should agents be looking for in a marketing platform to help them, or in a just a technology platform to help them through this next iteration of the business?
Yeah, so that is a super important question because we all are vying for the limited business that is out there. And when I look at the industry and you think about what was 1.8 million active real estate agents, probably down to 1.4 today. I don't know the exact number, but it's about 20% or something off where we were. And how many of those are active 100% of the time? It varies, right? Everybody's
Right.
opinion varies, but when I'm thinking about tools, the typical brokerage will have somewhere between 12 and 15 tools that they're working with. And when we look at that, we are a full platform. And I believe real estate agents
Mhm.
should be using a full platform, but also embracing all the parts of that platform. So when you think about technology, most technology companies today will report that they're getting somewhere between 25 and 30% usage. We want to see that increase to 60 to 7% usage, right? Because what
Mhm.
we are delivering is the full experience. And, most of our competitors are doing the same thing. And whether it's Lone Wolf or Lofty or
Mhm.
KV Core, we are talking about full platforms that deliver that consumer piece via website, through CRM, social media marketing,
Mhm.
text, email marketing, transaction management, or partnering with, someone like a SkySlope or a Dotloop, where you
Mhm.
are delivering in one solution, one login, one place to load your activity. From a broker perspective, you're getting help recruiting, because that's also a big thing in the industry today is where am I going to
Mhm.
find my next superstar that's going to help me hit my goals for 2025 and hit my targets for 2025 and beyond. So, when I'm looking and I'm talking to people out in, call it, the real world of real estate, the advice I give them is, first of all, find a platform that gives you 90% of what you're looking for, but also embrace that technology. You're choosing that for a reason. Learn it very well, and take your time when you learn it, because it's super important that you're using all the features and functions, because they tend to be all linked into one piece.
Mhm.
And the industry, let's be realistic, right? The industry has always focused on top of funnel, which is lead generation, right?
Mhm.
But if you're an agent, you've got 10,000 people in your database, you're probably only talking to 200 to 300 of them a year. What happens to the other 9,700 of them is
Mhm.
you need a platform, the AI that's out there today, but also only going to get better over the next 24 months, to be really that communication piece to those 9,700 people that might buy or sell a home sometime in the next 2 to 3 years, which is really your pipeline moving forward. And you've spent a ton of money on the lead generation that you've bought. There's a new lead generation platform. There's all kind of stuff going on. Our reality is that, what is happening for the long-term nurture of those clients, but
Mm-hmm.
also how are we looking at the world differently, from a platform perspective. I'm not sure you probably know this, but we released our property management tool because we
Mm-hmm.
believe that rentals is going to be so important to the industry, even now and for the next couple of years, because people have signed rental agreements, people have gone down that path that were possibly looking to buy or sell in that time.
Mm-hmm.
So only about 15% of real estate professionals dabble in rentals today. And we believe that that should go up, that should increase, because you're building a pipeline of qualified people that are investing in real estate in a different way, but they're ready to make that move, right? They're ready to
Yeah.
take the jump, take the leap. The home ownership dream is something
Mm-hmm.
that is real. It's not something that we made up a few years ago. It's a real piece. And I look at
Yeah.
myself, and we were talking about this before we started, but I'm a little
Mm-hmm.
bit older, so my situation has changed. I'm an empty nester. I've got this big house that I don't really need anymore. So what am I going to do with it? Well, I need the rates to get better before I actually transact on that. But there's probably, in your own local neighborhood, there's probably 50 of me
Mm-hmm.
that you could actually walk down that path with.
Yeah, absolutely. And as far as property management, I think for brokers, a lot of them started to build property management divisions when the market kind of went off a cliff a couple of years ago,
Mm-hmm.
because it's a good source of steady income. And even though it's a pain in the butt to do as a broker, it
Mm-hmm.
is still that steady source. And I know quite a few who are very, very successful with it, and have built up quite a portfolio as well. And it just makes sense because then they also have the sales side when, either the investor is ready to sell or the renter is ready to buy. So it's definitely a great area to get into.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one of the things I would say as an industry is that not only embrace the technology around it, but embrace that as a concept, right? Build
Yeah.
your business a different way, invest in it, even though you're not going to make a ton of money off a rental to start. You could build that business enough that you are starting to transact more from the rental side, or you're managing properties for some of your client base. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of opportunity there that wasn't there a couple of years ago because everybody wanted to buy and the market was ripe for that. Now we're in a different situation, and I'm not sure we'll ever get back to where we were before at 3% or less. I don't see that ever happening again. But if we can get down to 5.5, I think that'll really pump the market up to the point where we can really see a turn. And if you've been successful with your rental program or your property management program over the last 2 years, now it's going to be that time where you start to move people into available inventory. So massive, huge opportunity.
Yeah, you also mentioned the fact that I can't remember the percentage you said, but that a certain percentage of agents don't use the full programs
Mm-hmm.
of the all-in-one. In your experience, I know you talk to a lot of agents, brokers, team leaders. What is the roadblock for them? What have you found to be the reason that they aren't using the full or reaching the full potential of the program?
I think and as a technology company, I think you have to take a little bit of that on yourself, because part of
Mm-hmm.
it is education, right? So teaching them how to effectively use your product or pieces of your product, making sure that the training is available to them and you're providing that out there for
Mm-hmm.
whoever wants to learn it. But doing it in a way, or having the program where you're not just saying, hey, here's our program, we want you to use 100% of it. It's educating the people on all those different pieces and how they link together to make them successful. So CRM, massively important. Obviously, that's your database. That's what you're working off of every day. But part of that, working with that database, is letting AI take over or letting automation take over to drive those relationships where you're getting interest in part of those people. And then you can link that together with your social media marketing, and eventually those people buying it has to link back to your transaction management or a home report or a CMA report or all the little pieces that are included. We as a company have tried to integrate with some people that make sense, like a SkySlope or a dot loop, because those are the prominent technologies when you're thinking about transaction management. And those can be learned separately, and most of them have been, but it's piecing it all together. So as a broker, I can go in there and I can look at, sales rep one, real estate agent one, real estate team, how they're doing, who's responding to leads, what the quality of lead we're getting in, what are our conversion rates. And you think about this industry, and conversion rates are historically terrible, right? Between 1% and 2% typically from any lead generation program. But the reality of it is, as an industry, we need to take that on a little bit. It's a little bit of our fault, right? We don't follow up on leads properly. We kind of let them go after that first conversation, or, the competition is super fierce. But the reality of it is, you're still paying for those leads, and they're going into your database. And how you work your database and work the technology to be the biggest benefit for your business. So if I'm using, for instance, Lofty and I'm using 25% of Lofty, I'm not seeing the full benefit, right? So I'm investing quite a bit of money in technology. We all are. Everything, Chat GPT takes on the world, and you have to adapt and start using that. Or what's going to happen over the next 2 years with AI and how it's going to affect the real estate business is super, super important. So I see it all the time. When I've been on with brokers or realtors, they complain about the complicated system that they're using, but typically it's all about learning it. And once you learn it, once you get it set up, it's doing a lot of that stuff already for you. So you don't even have to really play that deeply with it. The remote experience is a big thing, is a challenge for a lot of the technology. So your experience on your phone or your tablet has to be the same as your desktop. Or matching close enough that they're not learning something separately. It's learning one thing and one piece, and then moving forward. And when I'm talking to brokerages that have adopted a technology stack, I say, don't try and learn it in 20 days. Learn it over 90 days, or learn what you can over 90 days, adopt that, and then go back and say, I'm ready for the next step. I'm ready to take the next leap of faith down the path.
Yeah,
that would be the biggest thing.
Yeah, definitely. I've fallen victim to that as well, where I get something and I only use a part of it because I just don't take the time to set it up. But I know if I do set it up, my life would be a lot easier. So it's definitely a time and education for sure.
Yeah. And, for, we'll call it the older generation, that I fit into, we're not all technology wizards, right? So the younger generation actually has a step forward because they have been playing with computers and kind of grown up with computers, the internet, the availability of your phone, the availability of tablets, and the technology that's all intertwined. They've got a real step up on some other people. So it's really, it's on us to learn it. And so we can actually stay competitive more than anything.
Yeah, absolutely. So what role do you see kind of the emerging technologies such as, ChatGPT and AI, generative AI playing in updating marketing strategies for real estate agents and teams?
Yeah, it's already taking shape, right? So if you think about the chatbot experience 2 years ago, you'd get wrong answers. You'd kind of get, there'd be this long string and it didn't make a lot of sense. Where today, a lot of the chat functionality is really amazing. Like you're having a true conversation with an AI bot sitting in the background. And when I think about ChatGPT, there was a great presentation at one of the events in the spring where, when the internet came out at first, it took, 12 months to get 100 million users. Well, ChatGPT had 100 million users in 17 days. So people are just grabbing onto this stuff because it can really help your business. Even if you're writing something as simple as a listing presentation, you can ask ChatGPT to outline it for you. It'll build that, and you can make some simple edits to it to make it your own. But when I think about how advanced that is and how quickly the changes are coming to that kind of technology, I've talked about it before, that consumer experience at the beginning is so important that when we're touching someone without really touching them, it's really going to be a key advancement in the way consumers interact with each individual real estate professional that's out there. And whether you're a broker or team lead makes a big, massive difference.
And how is Lofty integrating AI into your platform?
It's the number one thing we talk about and our development team works on right now. So is building out that AI technology so we know that the end consumer is going to have a better experience. So it all starts on a website, for instance, in the chatbot and the experience you're having there. But even for a real estate professional right now, if we get someone come back and visit a site and start playing on properties, we're going to, via automation, send a note to that real estate agent saying, hey, John Smith has gone back to your website 3 times. It's probably a good time to pick up the phone and call him and actually engage. And you're not wasting anybody's time at that point. You're really using the automation and the AI built in to do that follow-up for you without having to, have an assistant or anything like that. You can save money and time, and that's only going to get better. As we go deeper into, we'll use Lofty as an example, into the automation that's built into the CRM, that's built into the social media marketing. It's pretty much all tied together. So that experience from external, but also internally, is only going to get better for everyone using it.
Yeah, absolutely. And how, as far as data analytics go, how can agents better leverage them to understand customer preferences and market trends? How can they spot some of those market trends ahead of time?
Yeah, it's an education thing. There's so many analytics available right now. And, even in all these different products that we're talking about, you can really drive performance analytics, but also consumer analytics, market analytics, all out of your product. Like, what is going on inside that, and how can I use that to my benefit as a broker? Activity, performance by individual real estate agents, performance by teams, who's doing what within the scope of my own individual business. And I think that's where we have to start as an industry. Where can we use this technology that's available to us today to make our businesses more efficient and better moving forward, and holding people accountable to some things we haven't in the past? And all that information is readily available now. As a vendor in the space, there's also all kinds of information that you can gather to do a better job developing the technology and educating the end user on where they should be spending their time, as opposed to, wasting your time on certain things that just are not valuable or aren't as valuable as they were 6 months ago or 18 months ago.
What would those things be that are more valuable today than even 6 months ago?
Well, I think you have to go back, and I hate to continue talking about the same thing, but first of all, how an agent builds their brand is going to be super, super relevant. And whether that's through social media 18 months ago, which was, almost 100% Facebook, is now going out to different avenues, which is TikTok, which is YouTube, building a YouTube channel where you can provide the information or videos. And some agents do a fantastic job of that, and other agents are terrified of getting in front of the camera. But that whole social experience has to get better for a lot of agents. Yeah, you know what? I love Facebook, but I've kind of passed by it. I've moved on to the Instagrams and the TikToks, and my daughter is like, "Wow, you're on TikTok now?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, you almost have to be, right?" But as these things get better and we move down the path, it's not just about posting a listing on Facebook. It's about using the data that's relative. Same thing for the chat experience, right? If you build a great website, but it has a terrible chat experience, you're going to fall behind. And there are lots of products out there that don't deliver a really good chat experience. So you have to make sure you're using the right one. And we all kind of joke, and we have joked for years, that everybody's got to have a website, but websites are so, call it passe, but the reality of it is that's where that end consumer is going to have their initial experience with you, unless it's social, but it's usually still going to be on a website, because they're going to run a search. They're going to come up in the Google search. You're going to come up in some form of PPC advertising. So yeah, there's just embrace all that stuff that's out there for you to use, learn it, and grow with it, right? Like I said, a YouTube video can go a huge way. Like, look at my YouTube channel. Go check out my YouTube channel. What have I built up as a as a YouTube guy. It's amazing what you can do on there, and TikTok time that takes it to the next level, and so on and so forth. And Instagram, you can put a piece on there that expires and you're only going to get a certain number of views. So I've always been a technology guy, and I've always been in databases, and I've been in real estate databases now for 16 years, and managing that database, good quality information going in is good quality sales coming out, essentially, right? So use technology in all its different forms now to take your business to the next level as a real estate professional is my best advice.
Yeah. And my last question is just, any last thoughts on helping real estate professionals navigate this new market, whether it's from a tech perspective or a marketing perspective?
Yeah, it's certainly an interesting question, because if you're one of those realtors that and you'll see it posted on a lot of the social media sites, that's kind of panicking, they're not understanding what's going on in the world, and they're missing something. And there's tons of realtors that are out there that are passionate. And you see it even as you're driving through your neighborhood, you'll see the same name on lots of the signs that are on people's lawns. That's because those realtors are doing something a little bit different. They've built their brand in a way that they're getting the attention of a community. And face it, as a real estate agent, you have a community and you might have 50 other realtors in that community. So how do you differentiate yourself from those people? And how do you look at the world differently? Again, I mentioned the way we look at the world is search to settlement, right? How do I get the attention of that person, and where do I engage with them along that long cycle? But there's other ways of looking at it, right? You can think of the house as the asset. How am I going to put a new person into that house, and in 7 years, they're going to move because their situation changes? How do I manage that throughout that whole discussion? There is opportunity now with the way, we're set up kind of as not a community, but as a populace, which is some of us are getting older and looking for new opportunity. Mm-hmm. So you have to think about where your professional commitment can be, if I'm saying it correctly, in what I'm going to focus on, because you know what? I don't know the condo market, but I certainly know the rental community really well on how people can invest and put some money away or take some equity out of their house. I think the last number I saw was there's been $5 billion in equity created in the US over the last 10 years or the last 5 years. So there's money there that can be spent, right? That can be reattributed to other things. And if you remember that Saturday morning conversation you had with your client, and they said, today we have 2 kids, they're 3 and 5, and we got a plan for their education, but at some point we'd love to have a lake property, or we'd love to have investment properties. So as a real estate agent, you have to start thinking about those conversations and being very, I won't say aggressive, but I'll say in tune with what your past customers might be at a certain stage. And again, I use myself, right? My realtor sends me a calendar at Christmas, and that's all I get. Will I ever use him again? No. But I am at the stage now where I'm ready to take equity out of my house. I've already bought some rental properties, but I want to get more. And I certainly would love to downsize and possibly move to a nicer, not call it nicer location, but somewhere that has a lake view or is on a lake or something like that. So proactive, go back and think about what those people were telling you 5 years ago and say, hey, remember when we had that conversation? You said this, 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 and this. And if you're not capturing it in your CRM, you're missing it. You're totally missing it. But in the meantime, in the background, your CRM has been sending them information. So they know who you are. And now it's up to you to pick up the phone and say, hey, I want to have this real educated conversation with you about you're 10 years closer to retirement. What are you doing here, 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 and there? And if you're not a realtor that understands the concept, you're in the wrong business, without question.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Stuart, for joining the RealTrending podcast. You've definitely given some agents some things to think about. So I appreciate you coming on. I know it's been It's been a couple years since we first talked about having you on, so I'm glad it finally worked out. So thanks.
Yeah, anytime you want to chat real estate, I am open to the conversation for sure. I'm very passionate about it. And I actually look forward to when things, when I see those first interest rate changes come through.
Yeah.
I'm going to be so excited because the industry is like, we need it.
Absolutely. Thanks.
All right. Thank you.